Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Desired the welfare of all the suffering living beings. That is a typical symptom of a good person, that they desire the welfare of others. A rascal who is envious of others is Paradukha Sukhi. He takes pleasure in others' unhappiness. Whereas a Vaishnava is Paradukha Dukhi. He is unhappy to see the unhappiness of others. The mood of the Paradukha Dukhi is exemplified by Prahlad Maharaj. He said, Naivod Vijay Paradaraktaya Vaitaranyas Tadvirya Gayanam Ahamrita Magna Chittam Shoche Tato Vimukha Chetas Indriyata Maya Sukhaya Bharamudvahato Vimurha. He said, my dear Lord Nrsingadev, I have no personal problem. Even though my father was torturing me and trying to kill me in so many ways, I never considered that I had any particular problem. Because wherever I go and whatever I do, I am fully satisfied in chanting your name and your glories. However, even though I have no personal problem, I am personally very happy in Krishna consciousness, still I lament. I lament to see the suffering condition of the fools and rascals who are inimical towards you and are thus trying to be happy by this illusory happiness. But their attempts to be happy by material happiness is simply like carrying a heavy load. So all Vaishnavas, especially advanced Vaishnavas, they are considering the unhappiness of others and trying to alleviate it. So Vyasadeva wanted to do that. Therefore he compiled the Vedic literatures, as will be... This is explained in the next verse. Now Vyasadeva had to compiled the Vedic literatures to give knowledge to the ignorant people. Everyone is suffering in this material world due to ignorance. Specifically, ignorance of their eternal loving relationship with Krishna. This is caused by Maya, or the illusory energy, which the living being who is inimical to Krishna embraces, or rather makes himself subject to be embraced by. The living being in Maya is embracing Maya, and Maya is capturing him, embracing him. So the solution to all problems is simply to be Krishna conscious. Vyasadeva is giving this knowledge, the most valuable knowledge. In his meditation, he saw the Supreme Lord Krishna, and he saw Maya, by which the living being who is actually transcendental suffers in this material world. Now, when we say this, that Krishna consciousness is the solution to all problems, people think this is simplistic. But it is a fact. The commonly given example of the prison house can be cited in this regard. In the prison, one may feel so many difficulties. He cannot move freely as he would like to. He is subject to severe punishment for slight transgressions of the prison rules. He cannot eat what he likes, he has to eat whatever they give him. And the prison warders may harass him in so many ways. So he may try to make some solution to each of these problems individually. But all these problems can be solved at one stroke if he simply gets released from the prison. So similarly, the conditioned soul can have all his problems solved just by being Krishna conscious. However, a conditioned soul is like a prisoner who's been in prison so long that he's not even aware of life outside of prison. And even though he's suffering so much, he feels it's his normal condition. Yesterday we were discussing a little about psychology and psychotherapy. The modern psychologists have analyzed so many different kinds of mental disturbances. And many different mental disturbances take many different forms. And even many physical diseases, their actual root is mental disturbance. So the psychotherapists, they try to treat these diseases by various methods. By counseling, maybe by administering certain drugs. And in this way they try to help a person to be normal. But what is the meaning of being normal in this material world? Actually, in one sense, to be crazy is sane. If you think, well, everything in this material world is nice and I should just fit in and do my duty as a good citizen, then you're crazy. Because this material world is a place of death. Why should you be happy in this material world? In the early days of the Hare Krishna movement in America, Many people used to think that these Hare Krishna devotees, they are crazy because they'd never seen or imagined people with the men with shaved heads and both wearing Eastern-style robes, dancing and singing in the streets. And everything they heard about it seemed to be, the more they heard about it, the more they thought it was crazy. But they rise at 4 o'clock in the morning and take a cold shower, sing some funny things which we can't understand. They sing and dance in front of dolls, and then after that they go around a plant, and they believe that God is blue. So they thought these people are crazy. No TV, no meat. Prabhupada, when he heard this, he wrote an essay called Who is Crazy? Pointing out that persons who dedicate their lives to the service of God, they are actually sane. And people with the way of thinking that eat, sleep, drink, be merry and enjoy, for tomorrow we shall all be dead, they are actually crazy. Once after I'd been in the movement a few months, I asked Mukunda Prabhu, who is now Mukunda Goswami, that why do so many crazy people join our movement? So he said, well, that's a very interesting question. I once asked that question to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, well, you have to be at least somewhat crazy to join this movement. So that's a fact. If you're a normal, well-adjusted, respectable citizen, then you're not going to join the Hare Krishna movement. I think many of the members of the Krishna conscious movement, before they joined, they had the experience of thinking everyone in this world is crazy, except me, and I'm probably crazy too. So, from the medical point of view, one who thinks that everyone else is crazy, he is crazy. From the Krishna conscious point of view, one who thinks that everyone's crazy, he's eligible to take up Krishna consciousness. So from the devotee's point of view, from non-devotee's point of view, devotees may be crazy. And from the devotee's point of view, everyone else is crazy. But actually, if we impartially consider, those who are not taking up Krishna consciousness, they are killing themselves. Spiritually, they're causing their own death. The attempt to make someone normal in this material world, that is just another kind of craziness. There's a famous book written about, called Catch-22, which describes members of an American bomb squad, flying in bombers in the Second World War. So their task was to fly over enemy territory and drop bombs, which of course was very dangerous because they ran the risk of being shot out of the sky and killed. So they were considering that, well, you have to be crazy to do this. Why should we risk our lives to try to kill other people who we don't know them, we've got nothing against them? But they had to do it. The only way that they could get out of it is if they pleaded that they were crazy. So actually, anyone who would take up such a task, they're crazy. So, but if they pleaded that, well, I'm crazy because I'm ready to go on these bombing trips, they'd admit that actually, if you think like that, you're normal. So if you think this is crazy to go on this bombing trip, then they'll say, yes, that's right, you're normal. You're not crazy. If you think that it's crazy to go on a bombing trip, then you're not crazy, so you have to go on the bombing trip. So no escape. So like that, they recognize that so many people in this material world are crazy with so many mental diseases. Actually, many of these mental diseases are simply caused by the modern way of life. They were practically unknown previously, because the modern way of life is so unnatural, both physically, socially, and that it causes mental disturbance. But the materialistic treatment of mental disturbance is simply to adjust you to be normal. But being normal is also crazy. So what's the use? Therefore, we have the best psychiatric treatment, Krishna consciousness. When we understand that the actual cause of all our suffering is forgetfulness of Krishna, then we can start to remedy the problem. Prabhupada would say that our temples, they're like hospitals, and the treatment is chanting Hare Krishna, and the diet is prasadam. Once someone complained to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He said that, many of the disciples of yours living in the mud, they're not really up to the proper standard. He said you should send them away. Don't keep them in the mud. They're not fit to live here. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that, but this is the only place where you're saying that they're not properly behaved. We accept that, but this is the only place where they can get treatment. They may be rogues and rascals, but they're taking treatment for that. What hope is there for a sick man if you send him away from the hospital? On the other hand, if someone comes to the hospital and says, hey, look, what kind of place is this? Everyone's sick here. It's sick, but they're taking treatment. So actually, everyone in the material world is sick. They're suffering from the disease called Maya. And even the World Health, I was giving that statement, that even the World Health Organization said that in the developed countries, 70% of their people in life seek psychiatric treatment. And the other 30%, well, they get by on wine. That's not in the World Health Organization. Don't quote that. Wine or maybe religion, because even very primary religious processes, they help people to be more mentally stable. However, most religious processes in the world, they don't really cure the mental disease. They don't really cure one from Maya. But they help a person to go on suffering in Maya. These are some of the complaints of the atheists. They say that, well, religion makes you believe in an afterlife which will be very good. And therefore, because of that, people neglect to try to make their life here better. They say, the atheists say that instead of believing in some nebulous future existence, better to try to improve our existence right here now. Of course, that is another illusion. Because how can we improve our material condition? That is another illusion, to think that we can improve our material condition. We think by increasing material facilities, our happiness will increase, which is not true at all. About 3 years ago, the London School of Economics, which is one of the world's most prestigious schools of economics, made a survey into different countries of the world, into the different countries to make a survey of, in general, how happy the people are in different countries, based on how much people feel free from stress, how much they feel satisfaction in their existence, in their life, how much they are free from negative tendencies, such as suicidal tendencies, sadistic, masochistic, etc. So they found that the number one happy country in the world is Bangladesh, which is well known as a highly undeveloped country from the material point of view. America, which is so highly developed technologically, came in 36 something years. Russia was even lower. So he said that some countries they have happiness but no money, like Bangladesh. Some countries have money but not happiness, like America. Some countries have neither money nor happiness, like Russia. He didn't interview the devotees. Anyway, the point is that they wanted to trace because their whole raison d'etre, I don't know if that's proper pronunciation, is of the LSE is to study economics. So they wanted to see actually how does economic development actually help people to be happy, and they found that it doesn't, which verifies the axiom that any sane person can perceive, that money and economic and technological development don't bring happiness. Modern society places prime value on economic development, so that the people are brought to think, of course it may be not like that in Russia, but very much so in the Western countries, people are brought up with the world view that you have to work hard, make a lot of money, be a success. And because this is made the prime goal of life, then naturally other goals become secondary. So we find that people sacrifice morals for the sake of economic success. Even if they get married, they will let their family life be spoiled rather than let their career be spoiled. They think it's more important to get ahead of others than to develop relationships with others. There's no stress on the importance of spending time with people, cultivating relationships. So you get a whole society of people who are highly stressed, trying to get ahead of each other, but have they have no friends. They don't even have a very much relationship even with their parents or their spouses or their children. So it's not surprising that you have a whole society full of mentally disorientated people. Now here in this verse is discussed about Maya. So even a highly cultured Brahmana who is not Krishna conscious, he's in Maya. So what to speak of people in the modern age who have no culture, not even basic human values? What to speak of a society in which millions of animals are slaughtered, in which people think it is normal to have abortion? Very, very, very deeply in Maya. That is why when Prabhupada first brought his Western disciples to India, many people could not accept that these are devotees of Krishna. They thought that, well, how can people from such an uncultured and contaminated background be devotees of Krishna? And in many ways, they were right. Because even though the devotees were chanting Hare Krishna, they were in many ways very uncouth in their behavior. But people would complain to Prabhupada about the bad behavior of his disciples, Western disciples in India. Prabhupada would always defend them, that no, they're chanting Hare Krishna, they are devotees. Apichet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhakt sadhureva samantara samyadeva sitasaha. Even if one commits the most abominable activities, if he's dedicated to the principle of worshipping me, Krishna says, then he is a saintly person. Kshiprang bhavati dharmatma. He will quickly be freed from those bad tendencies and will become a perfectly religious person.
He will get freed
and become a perfectly religious person. So it would seem unlikely that persons from such an uncultured, uncouth background could come to this highest platform of Krishna consciousness, because the whole modern way of life is absolutely opposite to the Vedic way of life. In the modern way of life, people get up as late as possible, quickly eat something and rush off to work. In the Vedic way of life, one gets up as early as possible and spends several hours doing sadhana, and only after that does he eat and then starts work. This is normal Vedic culture. Traditionally in India, everyone used to live like this. They would rise early in the morning and do their sadhana, and then only after dawn would they start to do work. Because in the modern way of life, work is considered the most important thing. Life is centered around work. But in Vedic culture, life is centered around sadhana. And work is done as a necessary function for maintaining the body. Just like Prabhupada explained about his father, who used to do several hours of puja every day. Prabhupada said he used to go to his shop, he had a cloth shop, he used to go to his cloth shop for a few hours every day. But his real life, the center of his life, was his puja. So it doesn't seem very likely that ourselves, who are products of a barbaric culture, could take up Krishna consciousness. But this just shows the power of Krishna consciousness. But however deeply one is in Maya, he can immediately take to Krishna consciousness, if he is fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do so. This is explained in the next verse. Here in this verse which you're reading today, it's speaking about Paro pimanate nartam. Even though the living being is transcendental, he takes it for granted. He takes his anartha, his life which is in material existence, which is full of anarthas, unwanted things. He takes it for granted that this is normal and natural. So the next verse describes how one can be immediately freed from these anarthas or unwanted things. Anartha pashamang sakshad bhakti yoga madhok saje. One gets immediate relief from all anarthas. Directly one gets relief, immediately, by taking up devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. So we'll discuss this more tomorrow. It is something amazing that we can always meditate upon. That how fallen we are, and yet how merciful Krishna and his devotees are to give us this process. Where even though we're, by background, we're completely uncultured, we may have so many mental disturbances, so many bad habits, we have engaged in so many sinful activities, we have so many misconceptions, and on the whole, our position is completely hopeless. We are untouchable. According to Vedic culture, we are untouchable. No one should come near us to touch us. But Prabhupada came to the West and he converted the lowest class into devotees of Krishna, the most exalted position in human society, Vaishnava. So it's very amazing how the mercy of the Lord is extending to us. And let's take advantage of that mercy. We are surrounded by Maya, just like in the fog. In the cold morning, in the fog, you're completely surrounded by fog. You can't see where you should be going, or you can't see anything or anyone else. So we're trying to be devotees, but the whole atmosphere is full of Maya. It's very difficult to see where we should be going. But Krishna is just like the sun, which evaporates the fog so that we can see everything clearly. So we have to keep Krishna in our lives by very strongly practicing Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise the fog of Maya will descend and our whole consciousness will become full of fog. We should understand very clearly what is Maya and what is Krishna consciousness. Krishna Surya Sava Maya Hoyandaka Jaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Adhika. Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is just like darkness. Wherever there is Krishna, then Maya has no authority, nothing to say, nothing to do. So let us be in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So again we'll take questions this afternoon. I was thinking tomorrow evening what we could do instead of questions and answers. Another idea. Because most of the devotees here are my disciples or aspiring to be my disciples. Most or many. But probably not everyone knows everyone else, because we're all from different parts of mostly Russia and other parts of Syria. So it would be nice to have a disciples meeting in which everyone can introduce themselves to the others and tell a few things about themselves, their name, where they're from, how long they've been in Krishna consciousness, something about their situation, what